The median price of a house in a neighborhood went up by 20% over the course of a year. Always nice to write down the information you have. Sometimes pictures are fun. Okay, and it went up to 288,000 at the end of the year. So, example 2 asks us to find out the amount of the increase over the original amount. So, we'll set up a ratio table again, and that ratio table will have percents and dollar amounts. It really doesn't matter left and right which one you do. I tend to put the percents on the left. We'll start with 100% as always, and this time we're going up by 20%. This isn't one of those discount problems. We're actually having a percent increase, and we'll end up with 120%. And the 288,000 represents the 120%, so it goes on the same line in the table. So now we don't know the amount of the starting amount from the beginning of the year. We don't know the amount of the increase, which is actually the amount that we're being asked to find in our problem. So we're ready to start. I think since we have the amount of the 288,000, and we know we want to find the amount of the y, the 20% increase, we'll use those two lines. We really don't need the top line. So let's start. 20 is in the same proportion to 120 as y, which is the 20% increase, is to 288,000, which is the 120% of the original amount, whatever that is. So now we have our ratio. Now before we start trying to solve for y, I'm going to actually simplify this fraction, because the smaller numbers I have to work with, the better off I am. So 20 over 120 actually reduces to 1 over 6, because 20 goes into 120 6 times. So now I have 1/6 is equal to y over 288,000. And now I'm ready to solve for y. So I'm going to multiply 288,000 on the right-hand side, because I want to eliminate the 288,000 that's being divided. So now I'm going to multiply, and that will offset it. So I also have to multiply 288,000 on the left-hand side, because what you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other side. Properties of equality and all that. So now these cancel out, and so I ultimately have 288,000 over 6 is equal to y. That's not too bad. I can do that math. So 288,000, a fraction is just a division problem after all, divided by 6. 6 goes into 28 4 times, and 4 times 6 is 24, and so I subtract and I get 4, bring down the 8, and 6 goes into 48 8 times, and so it actually goes evenly, because 6 times 8 is 48. I get 0 left, so I'm just going to bring up my other 3 zeros, and so my y is going to be equal to 48,000. Now in order to check my work and make sure the whole problem makes sense, I'm going to find out what x is. So the original amount before the housing prices went up would have been x, and then I'm going to add the amount of the increase, 48,000, and that should equal 288,000. To solve for x, all I have to do is subtract the 48,000 from both sides. Again, what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So now x is by itself, so x is equal to 288,000 minus 48,000, so x is equal to 240,000. And that makes sense. Whoops, too many zeros there. Got to erase. Where's my erase button? There we go. There we go. Okay, back to the problem. So 240,000 plus 48,000 does equal 288,000, and that makes sense. Let's also check if I multiply 240,000 times 20%. 20% of 240,000 is 48,000. So if it goes up from 248,000 or 240,000 to it goes up by 48,000, then it will end up at 288,000, which is the amount it needs to end up at. So the problem makes sense from upside down and sideways and backwards, every which way I can look at it. So we must be done, we must be right.